I'm Dave Blake. I'm the founder and CEO of Client Success. And we are thrilled and honored today to have Star Hofer here today. Star is the VP of Customer Success, Vice President of Customer Success at PartnerStack. And today she's going to be talking about elevating your support experience, the evolution of Support 2.0. Star, how you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a while.
I know, and you're always one of our favorite guests. I forgot to mention that Star is also a top 100 customer success strategist, is voted by the community, which is no surprise. She's a great thought leader and great friend, and so Star, we're excited to have you.
Uh,
Tell us where you're coming in from, Star.
Well, I'm coming in all the way from Toronto, Canada. Today it is a balmy 32 Fahrenheit. I'm here today, so it's a little on the chilly side, but it's sunny. It's been pretty rainy the last week or so, and so I will take cold and sunny any day.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, we're so thrilled to hear this topic, and I know there's a lot of participants who will be excited to hear about it. So I'll let you get to it.
Excellent. Well, I'm just going to share my screen here. Let me know when you can see it. Can you see it, Dave?
Yep, I can see it.
Excellent. Okay, so today I'm so excited to talk about support. It is, in my humble opinion, the entire backbone of customer success. Customer success to me is everything post-sale, is what I'm using as I'm defining customer success. And the reason why I truly believe that support is the backbone is they do all that block and tackling so that onboarding can focus on onboarding, for success management to focus on the proactive outreaches and driving those outcomes. So account management can focus on continuing to expand with our customers, and for all of us to be able to continue to have and engage with our customers themselves. Support generally also has, if you think about like the gossip wheel, they always have the greatest dirt. They know who's using the product, how they're using the product. They know what's coming down the pipe for product as well, and they know the ins and outs of the product. So why is it that our support team generally doesn't get as much love, nor do they get a lot of the evolution that happens? Today, we're talking about just that. How do we evolve support? A lot of us would have created support as a means to an end. Everyone initially jumps in and everybody is driving and engaged of how to help our customers. But then the company evolves. And as a result, you end up with onboarding being its own department, and maybe even success management being its own thing. But support that would have initially been set up generally is like a George Foreman grill. It's set up and set and forgotten about. Today, I'm here to talk about, well, let's not do that. Let's evolve support to Support 2.0. This quote, I read this quote a while ago and it always hits home for me. It's the key is when a customer walks away thinking, wow, I love doing business with them. And I really want to tell everyone about that. I think about that every time I go to a phenomenal restaurant and I was like, oh my God, this is great. I need to tell everybody this. And the same thing is true about you and your product, but your service goes a long way as well. Well, let's talk about support 1.0. When I'm talking about support 1.0, what do I really mean? Well, I'm talking about the traditional support that was structured. I'm talking about support being reactive, very transactional, all about the maintenance of the product, focus all on quality and speed, and as a cost center. With that, there's a lot of key metrics that come with it, like CSAT, response rates that go with CSAT, time to resolution, first response, are we meeting our SLAs, one touch percentage, two touch percentage, backlog percentages, the bot resolution rates, and etc. And it's all focused on just speed. And when they're talking about quality, they're not necessarily talking about the quality of the interactions. They're really just talking about the quality of getting things through the door. Well, I want to just do a bit of a poll, and I'm going to call on a friend, Dave, here to launch the first poll. And I want to get your initial reaction to a couple questions I have. There's 3 questions. The first question that I want to ask is, how do you communicate with your customers right now? Do you mostly do phone, email, web chat, in-app helper chat, any social media? What about messaging platforms? Or do you prefer to figure it out yourself? So fill it in. I know there's about 64 of you there. You should see a poll that's launched up. Please type in your answers. All right, so here we go. Okay, so I see that phone on email is really taking, and web chat. Well, okay, great. The second question that's here is, did your ticket volume increase this year and last year outside like the standard growth that you expect? And the last question I have here is, how do you prefer to get help? So if you were going to phone in for your favorite app, how do you prefer to be assisted? Is it to figure it out yourself, or do you like to work with somebody? All right, I'll give it 2 more seconds here. All right, I will end the poll. I'm just going to share the results. All right, I think everyone can see this. So how does customer communicate with you? Looks like the #1 answer is email, followed by the second one being phone. When we go back down to, did the ticket volume increase last year and this year? Predominantly said yes. Ooh, and this one's really interesting. How do you prefer to be helped? It looks like working with somebody was 59%, which is really interesting. Well, based on some additional stats that's out there, 17% of tickets globally was the increase. So if your support reps are talking about, wow, things got really busy during the pandemic, well, everybody saw the same thing. There's been a huge increase on your support team during the pandemic, and that's outside the standard growth. The other thing to note is 81% of individuals prefer to find the answers themselves. Must be exception with the for our team that's here today, since most of you prefer to work with somebody. It also is, well, we're all in customer success and we like people, and so that might have something to do with it. Well, with that, that's there, I want to talk about how is support changing. If we're talking about 81% prefer to help themselves, and as we saw email and phone being predominantly support is functioning today. Well, what is really changing in support as we're starting to move towards support 2.0? The first thing that is really changing is that we have a lot of organization that's focusing on the customer journey, which I think is fantastic. We all need to understand what that journey is. And we're talking about everything from the inception. So whether they're discovering your brand in the discovery stage, education stage, prospecting, got to close, in onboarding, move on to adoption and growth from there. But there's always one element that I find that is missed in all of this. We do exceptional work in focusing on how we optimize the customer journey. We fail to hit one key thing, and that is the agent experience. And an agent is a support rep. So your support rep or your agent experience is defined as really the holistic view of how are you really empowering your support reps to be efficient and effective in order to actually support your customers. And oftentimes we go about building these beautiful customer experiences, but we don't think about the individuals that's interacting too heavily in those experiences. If you have an exceptional agent experience, generally that's going to change how an individual is going to perceive you and the brand of the company. So your support reps, think of that as their front work, their front line. So you need to invest in them. But how do you make that experience better? Well, better tools. So take a look at the tools in which your support agents or your agents themselves are using today. Is it a tool they actually like to use? It's a tool they're in all the time, but do they actually like it? Are there other tools that could complement and make their lives a lot easier? That's there. Are they getting the training? The training of how to actually support your customers. So that could be product training, but that also could be the soft skills training that they might need. Generally, your support team might be, an entry level position in your company, and they might only be in that role for a short period of time. What is the investment in training that you're making to them? What is the career path for those individuals in that role? What about automation? Automation can make the world of a difference. Sure, they could have a tool they like, but what can be automated? Oftentimes I see that, the support reps become a stopgap for some gaps in product. So your support team have to step in there and they have to do some, voodoo magic in the back end in order to make something function better. And it just could be because product just hasn't built out that functionality yet. More customer data. The CSMs today have way more data in some cases than your support reps do. And that needs to change. We need to make sure you're arming and empowering your support reps to be able to handle any question that can come in. And lastly, and this one's really, really important, is specific and relevant feedback. Your support team can be your next CSM or onboarding rep, or maybe a sales rep or product manager. In my case this year, we actually had someone in our support team move into our product, which really excites me. But the only way that can happen is you're giving relevant and very specific feedback. There's a tool out there I absolutely love. I have implemented it twice, not client success, I've done that too. But this tool is called Maestro QA. If you're on Zendesk today and you're looking for a tool that's really going to help you give very specific feedback to your agents, then look into a tool called Maestro QA. I promise you I'm not getting anything from it, but to me, it's the greatest tool because you can create a rubrics that makes sense for you and your organization, and you can give really timely feedback to your agents. The next one is omnichannel. There's lots of multi-channels that's out there today, and that has been working. A lot of you actually even note it, that you're using multi-channel. You have phone, you have web, you have in-app chats, you have email. There's lots of other channels. But when I'm using the word omni-channel, I'm talking about the holistic experience of it. It really is the experience of where everyone's coming together and everything has this cohesion to it. It's seamless. It's one where no matter where someone's reaching out, it all is pooled and it's quite easy to interact with. And this could be regardless of the platform or the method in which they choose. In fact, one thing I found really, really interesting during the pandemic is how much WhatsApp was used as being the primary source. Now, of course, retail did have a bit of a surge in support tickets, and so from that, that's going to drive a lot of it. But it's interesting that I can't imagine me out shopping for a pair of jeans, opening up my WhatsApp and having a communication with some in-store rep about the size being incorrect. But it goes to show that support is changing. Whether you are a B2B business, a B2C business, is we as consumers or as customers are demanding more. And we want to have communications that is in the apps that we use all the time, whether that is WhatsApp or text or Instagram or Facebook, wherever we might be is how we want to be served. So the question is, are you actually helping your customers today? And do you have an omnichannel or multi-channel approach? I'm going to talk about how you can consider this approach in your organization in just a second. First, let's talk about who has really great omnichannels and experiences that we have today. Well, one is Chrome. So for example, I can load up my laptop here. I'm a PC user. I load up my app. I log into my profile. It has all of my favorites that's there. Everything looks exact same. I go upstairs and I might use my media center. I log in and then boom, I have all the exact same things. They made that experience seamless for me. So everything's following. Amazon was another one, did the exact same thing. I can talk to Suri and she knows what's going on. As well for Apple, for Spotify. There's all of these different tools that's out there that's already doing fantastic support using omnichannels. So where should you begin? Depending on where you might be at in your evolution, I really have 4 key things. One is bring in everyone that might be actually already working on your customer journey. Marketing, for example, needs to be part of that omnichannel team. Your sales, yes, product, anyone else that's touching the customer journey, bring them in. Because at the end of the day, for an omnichannel, if you're having any form of communication, there has to be some form of CTA, a call to action. And the call to action needs to go somewhere. And so you need to make sure everybody is a part of that loop. Sometimes the CTA could be on the product side. It's depending on whether you're a product-led company or not. The next one is, if you can't start an omnichannel, Start with multi-channel, start there. The difference between the multi-channel and an omni-channel is just they might not be integrated with everything. So start small. Start by adding a new channel that's there and experiment. Find out, what is the traffic like? Is it actually happening? What is the CSAT responses? What does your agents think about this? Do they prefer, for example, live chat? In my experience, they don't. But do they prefer live chat? Well, what about your customers? Do they prefer it? What does that experience look like on both sides? Pick your battles. You can't boil the ocean all at once. And so my personal favorite is I hate to repeat myself. And so the best way to do it is figure out ways to prevent any repeat information that's going across multiple ways or channels of communication that's coming in. So I can always think of phoning Bell or Cogeco here in Canada of going, I already give my phone number, I get on a call, ask my name, my phone number again. I get transferred. I have to do the same thing again. It drives me crazy. So clearly they don't have an omni-channel. But focus on how do you prevent the repeat information going from one to another. The last one is it's all about easing the pains of your customers. That's why we're doing all this at the end of the day. The more frictionless that experience it is, the likelihood they're going to keep coming back and enjoy that experience. So always keep your customers in mind every time you're doing this, but also keep the agent's experience in mind. And so the better your support reps and happier your support reps are, generally your customers are also going to be equally happy. The next one is proactive support. Now, this one sometimes has a bit of contention with it. But before I get too deep into that, Dave, are there any questions we want to open up right now?
We had one question that went back to some of the original slides. That was, is there a noticeable age variation between those who like self-help versus those who like to work with a person? Any thoughts on that?
I think it's actually more of a personal preference as well. Like there has been studies out there that show that millennials and beyond do prefer to help themselves more so than not, but I'm not necessarily a millennial and I prefer to help myself as well, but I'm also pretty stubborn, so I'm not sure how much stubbornness really come into play.
There
Dave,
we go.
what about you? I think you're beyond the millennial as well, not to call your age out here, but do you prefer to get help by somebody or to help figure it out yourself?
I think it's. I'd go with the it depends. Sometimes I would rather for certain situations. For some reason, with airlines, I like to talk to somebody on the phone, and if I need help with a ticket or rebooking. But in other cases, I'd rather just be able to Google it and find it myself. So for me, it just depends on the type of support I need, and I think it depends. I like
Yeah,
the
that makes
choice, I guess. The choice of
yeah.
getting it online or having an individual.
I think speed also and the impact as well of what you're doing. Like if you're trying to figure it out online, it's going to take you twice as long. But generally, when you're talking to somebody from an airline, speed is of a factor. So that also might come into play.
That's true. That's true.
Well, let's talk. If you have more questions, please feel free to put them in the questions and answer section. We'll certainly be able to touch on that more. Proactive support is another one. Support generally gets the label of reactive constantly. And so they're all about reactive, but support doesn't always have to be reactive. Support can have elements of proactive in it as well. So for example, say you're a product-led company and you're cruising through the product and all of a sudden you see that a user is stuck on a page. And so the user is stuck, they haven't moved. Well, then you can have some type of indicator pop on the screen going, hey, would you like some help? Or I see that's here, or what about an article of this or this? Well, that type of suggestion is nudging at the user to kind of move on. Well, that is proactive. You're anticipating that they might have a question based on their behavior on that screen. That is proactive. You're preventing a support ticket that's coming through. It could be also you're on the phone with somebody. So Dave's example where he's at the airline and talking to someone at the airline, they might actually already go, hey, I could have you home an hour earlier. Is this something that you would like to do? And they can always add that little extra while they're on the call. They don't just need to solve the question at hand or why they're calling. They can add more value on the call than just be all about just solving in a break fix scenario. The other thing is that if they're on a call with somebody, they can always talk about a feature or something that either could be new or they might have a lot of repeat users. And so in some cases, they might have built a relationship with somebody and to be able to say, hey, Dave, I can see that haven't used this feature yet. You should check it out. And it could just be because you've talked to this individual quite a few times and you already know how to interact with your product. So when you're thinking about support, don't just think about it as being reactive. It can be a proactive support. And in some cases, I'm seeing support take more and more responsibility on from product. For example, if you're sunsetting a functionality in your product, then who's going to take the lead on that? In some cases, your support team will take the lead on that. And that means, it is a little on the reactive because you're sunsetting something, but they're changing their interactions with the customer. And it's not just about tickets and inquiries that's coming in, it's evolving the support function itself. Lastly, is bots. There's a lot of different notes out there about, all right, what is about bots? Like, do you like the bots? Do you not like the bots? And there's different types of bots out there. There's AI bots that's out there. There's chat bots that's out there. There's lots of these different bots. And bots themselves can be very, very valuable. And it can save agents a ton of time, especially if it's going to handle, the basic questions that are coming in. And that could be something like, how do I reset my password? Or, I have a common question that always comes in there. Now, of course, that's also something you should share. They should share back to product if it's a common question and try to work its way out of the product. But in the event that that can't happen, then using bots can be very valuable for answering those very basic questions so that an agent can focus on the bigger problems that's going on, the ones that are more complex because they might be using the system differently, or they might be stretching the boundaries of the product. And as a result, how they're actually experiencing the product could be different than what the norm might be. So if you do choose to bring in a bot, like maybe an AI bot or maybe a chat bot, then think about how much time this could save. Zendesk had noted that on average per rep, they can save 264 hours alone for a rep. And that could be like whatever the common inquiries are, is you figure out how to document that using whatever type of documentation tool you might have, whether that's Guru, whether that's some type of a community, whether that's like a portal of some sort for an FAQ, but setting up all of that information so that users can truly help themselves. And those bots then can really just interject when needed. So something to consider when you're thinking about bots. Another way to think about bots is it goes back to the agent experience. We're actually experimenting with this right now. We're using a tool called Forethought, and Forethought has a component of their product that allows it to suggest to the agent what the answer is. And this is very helpful if you have a complex product that's both wide and maybe deep. And as a result, if you have a new reps that's coming on, they might not really know where or how long it's going to take them to find the article that could be quite helpful to the customer that's reaching out. Well, using a bot can make that easier if it can serve up going, hey, you know what? This inquiry that you just sent over, it looks very similar to a question that was answered by Sarah, a month ago. And all of a sudden it matches and, the rep can review it going, actually, this is the same. And all of a sudden you just save that agent quite a bit of time. So bot can actually be used on both sides. It doesn't always have to be just on the customer side. Think of using bots internally as well. That could be a way of actually helping get your agents up to speed faster. Last one that's here. The last one is service transparency. Dave and I were actually talking about this earlier. I'm a big fan of this as well. Is customers want to know how well you are supporting them. So why not show your stats publicly? have it out there loud and clear. I took the snapshot of our portal this morning on that's there. And so you can see it looks like everything operational. It would be scary if it was red. I probably wouldn't have taken a screenshot of all honesty, but you could see a customer can go look up and find out what's going on. As a small story is I run a community up here in Toronto, and it was during the long weekend, and I was trying to make a change on our website, and we use Squarespace as our tool for our website, and it was really slow. And I was like, what is going on? This is really annoying. And I only had set aside so much hours of what I wanted to work on for the website. But then I went to their website and I quickly said, well, what's going on? And then I saw that it had a service disruption. And they said on average, it was going to be 2 to 3 hours. So instead of just trying to slog it through and deal with the slowness, I just left, went for a walk, and then came back in a couple hours and was able to do my work in less amount of time. But if they did not have the outage public, I would had slogged through it, had a terrible experience, think that the website was absolutely terrible, and that would have been my lasting impression. But now I knew how to set my expectations because it was all public. So food for thought, if you're not doing this right now, consider making it public. So in summary, there are 4 elements that I talked about that you could consider that's going to change the evolution of your support. Number 1, good agent experience equals a good customer experience. Communicating using tools that are convenient for your customers. If you don't know, then start interviewing your customers to understand how do they prefer to engage with you. Support can be more than reactive. AI and bots can really help you focus on the problems that you need to solve. So the agents don't have to constantly be working on maybe 100 password resets during the day, which can be quite boring, I can imagine. And then lastly, I didn't mention this early, but invest in documentation. And this can be a challenge because you do have to work cross collaboratively with friends in product, your engineering team, your customer success team, your onboarding team, to ensure that you have the most up-to-date FAQs, especially if you're going to be using self-serve. We noted earlier that 81% prefer to self-serve. Well, if that's the case, you really need to invest in documentation. The other note is earlier I noticed that phone was pretty predominantly high on that list. It was the second highest that's on the list. Well, what's interesting is that that really is going to change. Support or phone support is actually going to only represent about 12% of all tickets by the end of 2023. So if support or phone support is your primary ticket source today, please do reconsider how your customers are engaging with your support function. And so that they can get the help that they need so that they're constantly thinking as your brand as being an exceptional brand. So Dave, with that, I will open it up to the audience.
All right, excellent, excellent material, Star, and great advice and insights. Couple quick questions, and feel free for anybody listening in, type your questions in the Q&A or the chat. But one that I would throw out there is, what in your mind, Star, is the ideal profile for a great support agent? Do you have an ideal profile for talents, personality types, skill sets?
Yeah, it's a really good question. It also depends on your product as well. In my experience, I generally love someone that has a really strong drive, somebody that just loves to learn and willing to do whatever it is to learn. The second one is they have to be a strong communicator, whatever that might be. So if you're predominantly phone support, then you need to hear how they interact on the phone. But if you're not, like at PartnerStack, we don't use phones. Our agents don't have a phone at all. And so as a result, we're predominantly in text or some form of written communication. So somebody that can communicate very effectively in writing is important. So really somebody that has strong drive, in my opinion, they're hungry to learn, but they have a growth plan. They want to grow beyond support. In my opinion, I think somebody should not be in T1 support longer than a year. And if they are, I'm going to kick them out and move them into another role, because that's a tough role to be in for more than a year.
That's great. I'm going to actually ask the audience to send your thoughts of what are the key personality and skill set traits of a great support agent. I agree with you, Star. Mine is communication. And I love just people who love to engage. They like to, and they've got this friendly, outgoing, but an authentic personality. And those who really love to solve problems. That's just they're hungry to solve problems. So those are a couple that I would confer and add.
Also, Dave, to add to
Yeah,
that, also make sure that you know your product very well as well. If
yeah,
you are a very tech heavy product and who you're engaging with might be engineers or scientists, maybe not hiring bubbly, happy-go-lucky individuals is a good idea. So also make sure that you're taking into consideration who they communicate with on the other side. And so that would not go well if you had someone that was all about bubblegum rainbows, talking to somebody that prefers not to be talking about bubblegum and rainbows.
exactly. Well said. We've got a question from Judy. She says, "What roles are needed to roll out this idea of support 2.0? I.e., do agents do double duty and work on ticket resolutions as well as documentation, or are there other operational type or roles needed?" I think that's a great question.
That's
Do you put it all on the agent, or do you divide up the operational execution of all of this?
It all depends on the company size. It's a really good question, and I haven't figured it out yet, of all honesty. But I think you do have to have a combination of product enablement for sure. Like
Yep.
the support reps can't figure out how the product ticks and then try to write about it all at the same time. But support does need to have the writing ability to be able to write it from the lens that the customer generally want to hear it and know how to snip it. So I think it's the responsibility of your product marketing to really serve up the hows and then how to troubleshoot it. But I think it's the responsibility of support to then build that down into snippets. I what is the ratio between a support being in the queue per se versus working on other initiatives? I think that's different per company, but I think in my opinion they should do a bit of both, because if not, we're going to burn out support reps if all they are is in the queue day after day after day. I think having a bit of a change of scenery, and what that might be for a company might be different, but having that change of sceneries and working on other initiatives can only help their growth so that they can move into other roles in the future.
Yeah, I agree. I'll say that it kind of is stage specific. I mean, I believe early stage, everybody should be involved in documentation, product support, success, even sales, because you have to have that collective knowledge. But it seems like as you grow and continue to scale, I really believe having somebody own documentation is critical, and it's supplemented by those on the front line in the various teams. But somebody who's really owns it is the best way to do it. One thing that we're looking at doing is you mentioned product enablement. We're actually looking at adding a new role called customer enablement, and that role would be own documentation, customer facing documentation, videos, self help, and everything to empower the customer to get the answers they need and from however it makes sense. So that's something that we're going to experiment. We're excited about.
Ah, love it. I also had that role earmarked for us over here at PartnerStack as well. Eventually for us to build out once we're not growing in these double-digit numbers, which means that we've been focusing on onboarding our employees as being our primary problem right now.
Yeah, no, we'll trade notes as we go through it. Rod asks a good question. Along with this is, where do we believe that documentation should sit in an organization? Is it the product team, the support team, somewhere else? That's a good question. Be very specific. Is once you're ready to designate somebody as the owner of documentation, who should be that owner, and which organization should that owner be?
I'm biased, and it's I think it really should be owned by product at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And when I'm saying product, I'm specifically saying product marketing.
Yep.
That's there. Now, sometimes product marketing falls under the marketing function, and sometimes it could also fall under customer success, and sometimes it could also fall under product. But whoever owns the product marketing function, in my humble opinion, really should own that documentation.
Yeah, and I agree. I've seen it in different places. I've seen, and I agree. I think ideally it's the product team as they release new capabilities. They release the full documentation, and then others are supplementing, refining, improving on it as so that because I believe documentation is just a living, breathing. It's living and breathing. It evolves over time, day in and day out, and so it's important not to just release it once and just put it out there. It's figuring out a way to be able to have everybody contribute and incrementally improve. Just a thought.
I, I agree. I'm a huge Guru fan
Uh-huh.
that's out there for the tool. And one of the things that I love about it is that it has a set expiry so that you don't actually forget that it's
Oh,
just
well,
randomly out there, which is
yeah.
helpful. And so I think more and more, whoever is watching this video, Zendesk or all the other support tools that's out there, you might want to consider putting expiry dates on your article so that it is easier for everyone to update it. Because if not, you have somebody that has to go through all of the artifacts, which is even more painful.
That's great. We've got another one. Let's see, and maybe this was a question I was going to pose just to talk about. How do you balance this from a self-help or maybe specifically bot experience versus a human experience? Going back to my scenario, I started thinking about like why do I like to talk to the airlines? Because most things, and usually it's a situation where I want empathy from the airlines. You know what I mean? And I want you talked about the extra being proactive, and that's what I'm looking for. Is I'm looking for more than just the answer. I'm looking for understanding and empathy and solutions that maybe a bot wouldn't surface. How do you balance that in as you're building out your team? This balance between the human experience and bot experience.
Yeah, and I think there always needs to be a human experience. Like, I don't think the bots are going to take over the world.
Yeah.
That's there. I think there always needs to be two experiences. In some cases, you actually need to have the bot actually transfer to an actual human experience that's there. And so, talking about the multi channels and omni channels and where it's seamless is things that we do have to consider. But I think it comes down to understanding why are you calling in the first place? Like if we unpacked why are you calling the airlines, you indicate it, you're looking for empathy, right? Your pain is probably bigger,
Yeah.
right? It's not a matter of generally if you're interacting with a bot that's there, is you probably know that it's a question that's probably simple to answer,
Yeah.
right? And so you just want it's a timing thing. I want to get in, I want to get out. Time is the factor. Where if I think empathy and understanding and maybe even a little bit more that you're asking for, that's the human side of things that you might want to have. And I think we need to understand when individuals, like customers, are interacting with us, why are they interacting? And what do we want to give them? And then we cater towards that. So if time is the factor that's there, then how do you serve up this content of things that the quick things that they might want to get? It's like going to the grocery store, right? They've optimized that experience beautifully. You get to the grocery store, actually Indigo has this done well, or chapters here in Canada, is
Uh-huh.
you grab your books, you walk up to, you're about to pay, and all of a sudden you walk past the trinkets section. They're like, oh, would you want this trinket or this trinket or this trinket? It's like, yes, I want all of those different things. And all of a sudden I get to the counter and I've went for one book and I ended up with like 100 things. It's like going to Costco. You can't get out of there unless you paid like 100 or 200 bucks, because they optimized the experience that's there. I think the same thing needs to be considered for support, right? Is why are you doing it? Are you coming in to do something quick, get in and out, or are you actually looking for more of the empathy and a more human experience that's there?
There you go. Well, my good friend Ernie Fontes made a good point. He's like a suggestion to really spend the time to track the tickets and understand what are the top questions that are out there, and then transition those into bots or self help. That's one good way to do it.
Can I
Um,
add another? Because that's really good.
yeah.
What Ernie said is when a lot of us have support today, and we might be using a tool that's out there, but oftentimes we'll create, categories or a way of kind of creating these buckets, right? For, different things that's there. We never go back and change those buckets sometimes, but the
Yeah.
product evolves. So to Ernie's point, take a look at your tools that's there for support and go back and going, wait, should we be changing the buckets? Because we've now already solved the most common questions that are coming in and alleviate it coming through support, then you might need to change those categories so that you can find the next big thing that you can
Yeah.
solve, whether that's through AI or through the product.
That's fantastic. We've got Ben here who's suggesting that or saying that they call it training enablement and they have it sit in CS but coordinate with product and other teams. Just because the CS is typically at the center of all things customer, and so that's another option. Speaking of customer success, I'm curious for the audience. I'm curious who on the on the webinar today is a customer success leader who also owns the support experience. So if you are a customer success leader and you own the entire post sales experience, including support, maybe raise your hand virtually online and let's see how many are out there. And that leads me to a question with you for you, Star. As a leader who owns success and support, how do you facilitate and drive the right collaboration? How do you look at roles and responsibilities there and make sure that you optimize it?
I'd love to know anyone that can answer that question very effectively,
Okay.
because I think it's an art, really,
Yeah.
right? Of figuring out how to have the roles and responsibilities. CSMs sometimes feel that the only way to build a relationship is to jump in and be support sometimes, right? Because they're like, I need a way of getting in and think of this as the way of getting in. Which, as you all know, just changes and end up being reactive and firefighting, and then you have to change that behavior, which becomes tricky. So I'm not sure if I figured it out yet, to be honest. Dave, I think it's always a work in progress. I think it comes down to, do you have an exceptionally strong leader for your support function? Because it's not just, I think, how CS operates, it's how support functions with product engineering. I think it's really, really important.
Yeah.
And if your support function and your support function and product and engineering can't figure out how to work very effectively together, I think all the rest of CS is kind of a little SOL.
Yeah.
That's there. And so I'm not really answering your direct question, but I think to me the most important element is how product feeds information to support and how support feeds information back to product. And it's an equal relationship. Oftentimes support is looked at as being like, the cleaners, like the cleanup crew of whatever is left over from product. And it doesn't always feel good, but they need to be equal partners where, they need to be the eyes and ears of what's going on for a customer, and that information needs to be passed back, but product needs to reciprocate, right? And say, actually, I see that we're creating more pain on your side. Let us fix that.
Yeah, I agree. I think as I look at it, I think that one is there needs to be very clear roles and responsibilities defined both internally and with the customer so they know who to go to for what. But at the end of the day, having the support team and the success team really be unified in the fact that we're here to serve the customer and we're here to derive an amazing customer experience. So um, it's not about bickering of who's supposed to take what, but being able to have this really unified and I guess kind of fluid experience. If a CSM gets, for example, if a CSM gets an ask from a customer that is clearly should be directed to the support team, they can give a warm handoff and say, hey, you know what? Let's have my colleague, Sally or John in the support team take this. They are great to do it, and this will allow me to focus on some of the strategic things that we normally. Or that might be a way to do it, but clear roles and responsibilities, clear messaging internally of how both are critical. The frontline support, they're the first line of exposure to our company and our experience, and so they're so critical. But at the end of the day, we're both trying to be unified in delivering a great experience. So.
Fast is always the key thing that gets me, right?
Yeah.
When I have reps that reach out to me, and the difference between support, it's like, oh, if you want to get timely responses based on this break fix, you're going to want to reach out to support. And it's like, yeah, that makes sense. Because I might be on a meeting, but support is just always there waiting.
Exactly. I love it when we have our GT reviews and in or whatever, and the reviews call out our support team. I love that. saying how that it's great. On the other hand, if it's poor, that's. But I love it when we receive feedback in NPS or other ways where they shout out not only our support team but individuals that they care about and appreciate, have gone above and beyond and have been delivered an authentic experience. So that's something as a founder to CEO that I really love to see.
I do too. We get a lot of those that come in as well. For any of you that's on the call and doing a G2 review, and if you do have a personal relationship, note it, because it does mean a world to both the support reps and the CSMs to see them being called out.
I agree. Any last thoughts or any questions from the audience that you'd like to pose? Or anybody even want to let me unmute your mic to ask a question live? Feel free. I know we've got a few that have hands up. If you want to talk live and ask a question, keep them up. If not, let's put them down and we'll. Okay, quickly. They all quickly went down.
There was quite a few, Dave, that do own everything post sale, which is really nice to see. I know me personally, I prefer to actually own everything post sale because I can find you could really make a big impact when support is under your umbrella. Because if not, it's too many moving parts, in my humble opinion.
Yeah.
But I love that a lot of leaders are also going this route as well.
And that's what we've done in client success. So many of you know Christy Faltruso, our VP of Customer Success. She owns the entire post-sales experience as well. So she has support, success, and implementation, onboarding, and this new role we're looking to do with the customer enablement. So it provides to be able to have a really good cohesive experience from that perspective.
I'm wondering, Dave, like how many individuals today actually talk about their support metrics across the company? And I don't mean like just your traditional, like, CSAT and CSAT response, because they both should go hand in hand. That's there. You can't say you have a 98 CSAT and you only got one response, because, that doesn't mean anything. So they have to go hand in hand. So would love to hear how many individuals like what is the metric that they might use company-wide as the key metrics?
That's an interesting question. If you had if anybody wants to type that in the chat, what are the key metrics that you focus heavily on we've got NPS that's come through from Rune. Who else? What other metrics are the key ones from a support experience? Any other brave souls want to share? CSAT and first response, time to resolution, CSAT, NPS, solve tickets, handling hours. Well, good. I want to Star and I had a good conversation before this, and I want to maybe I'll pose the question that we talked to about each other. So let me read a few more of these. We've got we track trouble ticket volume and aging, number of escalations that go around support. That's interesting. Hillary uses a tool for quality, and we look at quality metrics. And Eva, I'm sorry if I got it wrong. We're shifting from quantity to quality. I like that.
Love it.
SLA, compliance, etc. One of the things that I'm trying to look at with our team is from my own experience working with customers. I feel like that customers are. Well, maybe can I tell a story? Do I have time for a story?
You do. You have about 7 minutes.
Okay, I'll hurry. When I was at Adobe, we had global customers of all sizes around the world. One of our customers was Intel. And there was a time in our evolution at Adobe where we had a huge backlog of support tickets. And so we went through a massive effort internally to transform the engineering and support experience to really focus on time to resolution. And we did all these types of things around time to resolution. Well, one time we went up and had an account review with our executive sponsors at Intel. And we brought this presentation to talk about all this stuff we're doing to time to resolution. And they stopped us kind of through the discussion and they said, you know what, time to resolution is interesting. But more than that, we're a software company too, so we get that bugs and issues take time to resolve. What we value most is transparency and frequency of communication. And they said, because we're dealing with you, but we have a whole bunch of users behind us that are asking us that is like, where's the status? Is it, and those types of things. So I'm really looking for a kind of a new metric that looks at that transparency and frequency of communication as potentially a valuable aspect around our support experience here at Client Success.
I look forward to seeing how you're going to measure that as well,
Yeah,
Dave, because I think it's a tough one, right? Like to your point of, you know, if you over optimize on, first touch, if you over optimize on one thing, like, how do you measure it? But I love the track that you're going down, that you're focusing on really the quality of the engagement. And you and I were chatting about this before the call. If I really like the tool Maestro QA that allows you to create a Rubix, and that Rubix in your case actually could be engagement. And
yeah,
then you have a score, and then you can have an average score for all of your different tickets that's there, and it's kind of like a health score.
yeah,
The health score is not, health, as we all know, for customer success can mean so many different things, right? It could be risk of churn, it could be overall adoption, it could mean so many different things. But the same thing in support is if you can create a health score type thing, or a quality score using that approach as well, it might actually be a leading indicator into your CSAT or even NPS.
yeah. No, I love that. Well, we'll continue to trade notes as we all transform our support organizations and our customer experience. Um, it looks like we're getting close to time, and so maybe I will start to wrap up. Star, thank you so much for the awesome insights and suggestions and best practices. Tell us if you have any final thoughts. Let us know, and then let's tell the audience where they can find you online to follow you and your thought leadership.
Yeah, my only final thought is for support reps, go talk to your support reps themselves. Find out the things they really love and they don't love, and find ways of making their jobs easier. Their job is hard. And if you forgot with appreciation, maybe join support for a day and be a support rep to feel what it feels like. Because if you're in that role day in, day out, you'd probably be exhausted as well. Where to find me? I'm on LinkedIn. I'm Star Hofer. Pretty easy to find. If you want to reach out or have questions, please reach out. I'm always happy to chat.
Awesome. Thanks so much for joining us, Star, and thanks to everybody joining us today. Thank you for all the questions. We are always grateful that you take your time out of your busy day to be with us. For us from the Client Success team, thank you for being great friends in the community. If we can ever help you, please reach out. We're always happy to help. But between now and next time, we hope you have a great week, and thanks again for joining. Bye, everyone. Thanks, Star.
Bye. Thanks, Dave.